Hello, and welcome to today's Natural Gardening Live with me, Josie Rainbird, your natural gardening coach. Hope we're all doing all right. It's February. What is this, the first live of the February month? I think it is the first live of February, actually. Yes, it is. I should know that, sorry. My calendar's still in January. Honestly, it's me talking about planning and prep, and I've not even got the right day on my calendar. Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about pre-spring garden prep. So spring is just around the corner. It may be a long and winding corner, but it's just around the corner. We are optimistic, people. We are optimistic. Today we're talking pre-spring garden prep. I'm going to be covering seeds you can sow now, plants you can plant now to give your garden start, garden a bit of late winter, early spring colour to give you a nice see-through into spring. We are talking about how to reduce the winter stress your garden's going to be going through at the moment to give it a good helping hand, if you like, a good boost ready for spring. Help it recover and get itself ready, because the worst thing you can do is go through winter and then it has to recover in spring before it can get growing and producing buds and fruit and whatever else. So we're going to try and mitigate the amount of stress it's having now so it can recover faster, ready for when spring hits. So, and then of course the planning for spring and what we can plan and get organised for now. That's what we're going over today. I hope you're ready for it. Sowing seeds. Now, I know it seems a bit odd about talking about sowing seeds when it's still fairly cold outside, but there are actually quite a few seeds that you can sow in February. There's a few you can sow in January, to be fair, but it's good, it's okay. We can get ahead of the game by sowing certain types of seeds now to give us time to get ready for spring. So, created for you today this free resource, so sowing and growing in your vegetable patch. Now, this is related to only fruit and veg, but I'll be talking to you about flowers in a minute, so it's fine. In said free resource that I've created for you, I've got a calendar. It will tell you a selection of fruit and veg that is easy to grow and good to harvest. So really good starting point vegetables. It will give you starting dates of when you can sow inside and sow outside, when you can plant the plants out, and when you can harvest them. So that is the calendar right there on page 1. I have also got in this lovely resource a frost map as well for your last frost of the year, which we'll go into in a bit later when we talk about winter stress. It's all split up into different colours, different areas, so you can see that you have all the dates related to the colours. It's like a little key there. So it just tells you when your last frost is due. It's a rough guide because obviously they can't predict the weather week on week, so that's not going to be day accurate, but it's going to be a good guide so you can kind of think, okay, end of April, middle of March, whatever, that's my last, roughly when I'm going to get my last frost. Give it a week or so for the soil to warm up, I can start planting stuff out or sowing seeds in the garden. So it's a really useful thing. We'll talk about that in a minute when we get to winter stress. My next page in this resource, if you can see that, I know it's back to front, so don't worry too much. If you download it, you'll see it clearly. A companion planting guide. Now, this is a good page for what vegetables you can companion plant for vegetables, how they support each other. So it gives you a really good way of planning out vegetable patch. So you can kind of incorporate things, growing things near each other that really do help to support. You can end up fitting more into your vegetable patch that way, harvest more, and thoroughly more productive all round, which we like. Next on the agenda in here, we've got a sowing and growing tracker. Now, I enjoy doing this myself, which is why I added it in, because I find it useful. So in this, you've got a whole section for, you can write the names of all the seeds you've sown. If you've got more, then you can just put the page again. It's fine. So yeah, I know I would fill this page quite easily with the amount of seeds I've got. You've got sowing date, so the date that you've sown the seeds, which is quite useful. And first signs of life. So I like doing this to track when each seed I've sown, how long it's taken them to germinate, and first signs of life. So I like writing that date down. When you prick them out and when you pop them on, and then when you plant them out into the garden. So you can track all that on this page as well. It's a really good idea to keep this information. It's also useful to look year on year, so you look back on it as well. So you fill it in this year, and then next year when you come to fill it in again, you look back and go, oh, okay, but that's how long that took to germinate in an ideal situation. And yeah, you can kind of keep track of it and get a good idea of what you need to do and when. It's good information, that. And last one, no, it's the last page, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not dreaming. And last page included in the resource that I've done for you today is a growing and harvesting planner. Now again, this is something I just do in a notebook generally, but I thought I created it in a bit more of a calendar style. So you've got all the months. I know you probably can't see it very clearly because it's only a little, if I can move a bit closer. You've got all the months. And then using the calendar on the first page, you can put in when you've sown seeds, when you have planted them out, and then when you expect to harvest them, and when you're harvesting them. So it gives you a really good way of, especially for succession growing, of knowing if you've sown it at this point, when you expect to harvest. So you can get really good track of it all then. And if you're get my teeth in, seriously, succession growing, you can write when you've sown it and when you expect to harvest it. And then when you want to put your next crop in, you can kind of work it out, because you want to work it so you sow them another 4 weeks pre-harvest, another load, to then carry on through. So 4 weeks pre-harvest, you keep sowing. So that planner section there is really useful to help you can get a consistent crop throughout the year. The first page, that little calendar, is really useful. It gives you a good idea of what you can sow in January, February time. And there are actually quite a lot of vegetables that you can even sow outside now, which is really good. But if you've got a windowsill in the house, your greenhouse, so there's actually quite a lot that you can do, which is great. So plants to plant now that will give a little bit of colour to your garden, which we like, because everything looks a little bit sad and grey in the winter. Now, I know there's going to be lots of early spring bulbs coming through, like snowdrops and things, so they're going to be really bringing the delicate colours through. So if you've got those growing in your garden, I've got them growing in my garden, they look lovely. So yeah, but if you've got anything like that, but there are some plants that are actually quite cold hardy, so winter hardy, that you can plant in your garden now that will flower continuously from now until spring, even summer in some cases. So it gives you a nice little transition from the greys to the greens. So really good plants on this lines are violas and pansies. They're deceivingly strong plants, they are, and they will bring a nice impact of colour into your garden. If you plant them in clumps, like 3s and 4s and 5s, just dotted around your garden, it just catches your eye as you go through, and it just brings a little bit of colour in, which is really nice. But they are really strong plants, and they can put up with a lot of cold, and it just will not affect them. One thing I will say, when they are flowering, God, my teeth today, seriously, when they're flowering, make sure you deadhead them, because as soon as the heads go over and they start producing seed, they stop flowering really quickly. So as long as you keep deadheading them, going through and just cutting the heads off every now and then, they will keep flowering and keep producing more and more. So that's fine. So violas and pansies. So you can buy snowdrops in the garden centres and nurseries now that you can plant into your garden that will be coming to flower, if not already in flower now. So you can plant those out, and they are really nice, really late winter, very early spring bulbs to put in. So they're a nice bit of natural colour going through. And cyclamen. Cyclamen are one of my favourite sort of winter flowering plants. And with their reds and pinks, real like everything from bright to dark colours, they're really nice little spots of colour as you go through the garden. And they're perennial, so they'll keep coming back and keep going back each year. And they'll spread and divide. So you can dig them up, divide them up, move them around the garden each year. So they're a good investment plant, they are. As far as cold, hardy, colourful plants, those 3 options are really good starting points for your garden, especially now when it's all looking a little bit cold and tired and sad. You can inject a nice bit of colour into your garden ready for spring. Winter stress. Now, we spoke about this at the beginning and with the last frost map. So winter can be quite stressful for the garden. It can be quite stressful for us, in fairness, but it can be quite stressful for the garden. It can be challenging, and it can cause the garden quite a lot of damage, and even damage that you don't see. Now, because plants generally go into dormancy, they go to sleep over winter, if you like. They die back, ready for the spring. You don't see a lot of this stress. It's often in the root systems that they get stressed, and with evergreens as well, you might see the stress a bit more. So we need to mitigate the stress a little bit as we go into spring to help the plants in the garden recover. So when it comes to spring, it can just do its thing, and it doesn't have to worry about recovering first and then growing. It can just start to bud, and it can just be its best self straight off the bat, so it doesn't have to worry about recovering. So if we can do things now to help it recover in advance, all the better. So as I said about the last frost date, knowing your last frost date is important. It will help you to know when you can plant things out safely, when the risk of, when you can remove protection and things like that, when the risk of frost has as good as gone. I always say with the frost date, I use it as a guide, and then I leave it a couple of weeks and go, okay, let the soil warm up a bit, and then we're going to take action. A few things that we can do now in the garden. As much as I don't like doing too much in the garden this time of year, because you don't want to cause damage where you don't need to cause damage. But there are quite a few things that you can do to help the garden recover and get ready for spring. Now, you're probably sick to death of me saying things like this, but mulching can really help. It's got so many uses and so many benefits to the garden. A good mulch, it's fantastic. So if you've got homemade compost left, if you've got leaf mould left, if you have got any well rotted manure, anything like that, even if you go to the garden centre and you buy bags of mulch, it can go a long way to helping your garden to recover ready for spring. Mulching can insulate the root systems to help them wake up, if you like, because as soon as the soil that they're in starts to warm up, I'm sorry if I'm going a bit in depth here, as soon as the soil that they're in starts to warm up a little bit, they start to grow, and they start to recover any damage that they've received from frost, frozen ground, insects and things like that. They start to recover, they start to grow, and as roots start to grow, they start to take in nutrients. Mulching also provides nutrients, so perfect. Warms the roots up and then feeds them, which is what we want. And as soon as the roots start taking in nutrients, it starts to recover the body of the plant and then triggering growth. So as soon as the weather starts to warm up, sort of usually, as soon as the soil gets to over 10 degrees or thereabouts, this will trigger budding and new growth. This all helps. So by mulching, you're actually going to be helping it recover ahead of when the weather starts to warm up, and then it can just go, oh, I'm growing, and be fine, rather than having to then repair the roots, wait for the roots to be able to take in the nutrients, for the nutrients to then affect the plant, for the plant to then grow buds and be productive. So that you see how you're cutting all that time scale out then. So just by mulching, you're doing that. Now, this one is a bit of controversial because I don't like to generally cut anything back until the spring starts to arrive, weather starts to get nicer, because there's things living inside plants, leaves, even insects and things. So pruning deciduous plants, this is where I'm going. Pruning deciduous plants, or pruning plants in general, encourages new growth. Again, I'm sorry if I'm going in depth. It's the only way I know how to be. Pruning plants will encourage new growth. Now, pruning deciduous plants, the evergreens you can leave until spring, which is fine, and then everything would have moved out and you won't have to worry too much about anything living in it. But if you're pruning deciduous plants now, you've got a better chance of seeing anything living inside, especially if it's a bush or like a dense shrub or something like that. Just look to see if there's anything living, nesting inside, and whether it be birds or insects, to where you can prune. But pruning does help to encourage new growth, and it helps to remove any damage or disease, and it is quite important. But you really do have to be vigilant, that's the wrong word, vigilant, that's the word. And the last but not least, which I know I have mentioned before, so I apologise if I'm reiterating myself, clean your tools. Clean tools, pots and surfaces. Now, this is all to do with the oak disease and bacteria build-up. I did a video on this the other day and I've spoken about it many times in the past. So yeah, clean pots, tools and surfaces to reduce bacteria and disease build-up. Because as soon as the springtime comes and there's all this lovely new green growth, if there's any bacteria and disease about in the garden, you know it's going to go straight for the soft, sappy stuff, the new growth that's very vulnerable, and it won't survive, which is really sad because the plant goes into so much effort to produce this new shoot, and then we just let it die. It's sad, makes me cry, not good. So by cleaning everything down first, cleaning your tools before you go pruning, cleaning up pots and surfaces and things, then you're reducing the chance of transporting disease and bacteria around the garden and affecting anything that doesn't need to be affected by it. Easy. So, winter stress. Not good, but easily avoided. Planning. So, I've given you the freebie, which I'll leave in the description and in the comments. I have got planning sections in there to help you. Sorry, I can't tell the pages now. Planning sections in there to help you know when you're going to be harvesting from the day that you sow the seeds to, you can kind of guess by looking at the calendar at the front when you're going to be harvesting them, and then you can plan on succession growing and how you're going to harvest things throughout the year to keep a nice flow of fruit and veg throughout the year. But also now is an amazing time for you to be planning your summer bulbs. Summer bulbs, really good time to be doing that now, because you can decide on your colour schemes, you can decide on what you want to grow in the garden, how it's going to look, and the bulbs need a good time period, if you like, for the warmer soil times. That's why you plant them in the spring. They need to be planted in the spring ideally, so they can establish, they can get a good root system going, and then they can start to bud and sort of sprout, if you like, and not get any risk of being burnt or scorched by frost or summer sun. They can sprout quite happily and get ready and get established, ready in time for flowering in the summer. So by thinking about it now and then planting them in the spring, you're giving them the best chance for the fantastic display, all the colour that they can produce, and you're doing it because you're prepared and you're ready. So it's a really good time to plan those now as well. So I have your vegetables covered with the old guide, and I have your bulbs covered. So I will also be going over this, because this is a little bit of a, I hate to say it, a little bit condensed. I know it doesn't seem that, a little bit condensed down, but I'll be going through this in a lot more detail in the Gardeners membership next week. So I'm going to be looking at the calendar, it's in January. Next week, which is 16th, it'll be on. So it'll be 2 p.m, I think I've got it scheduled for. 2 p.m. on 16th, so we're going through what we spoke about today and more, in lots more detail, to help you prepare yourself for spring. Sorry, clicking my pen, it's annoying. If you're interested in joining that training or joining the membership, I'll leave a link in the description and in the comments so you can check that out. If you've got any questions about the membership, feel free to comment below this. Quite happy to answer them. But it is a good resource if you're interested in learning to grow your garden naturally. So I'll leave a link to the guide in the resource in the description for you, and the membership, so you can check those out. Thank you for joining me, and feel free to comment, and I'll speak to you later. Have a lovely day. See you later.